Hey everyone, welcome to a special kind of different epic. As you can tell, there is no fancy green screen behind me. I am not fully even dolled up. I'm just shooting from Aria and Ava's room right now. I just wanted to share some things that are on my heart. Again, I know we started a series last week, but since then there's been other things going on in my life, as a lot of you guys are aware, and Melissa's and Aria's and Ava's, and just kind of praying about it. I started writing out the teaching, and I just felt like God wanted me to talk about something else, at least for today. So if you haven't been following or you haven't heard, it's been pretty crazy. We didn't really tell a whole lot of people, but the second night after Ava was born, she showed signs of my skin disorder. So she started developing blisters. It wasn't super bad. I think in total the first week or two, she only had like 3 blisters that appeared. She had a couple that appeared in her mouth. We've been taking care of them. They've been healing up good and everything. And over the last week or so, she's had a couple more appear. And then she spit up a couple of times, and there was some blood in the spit up, and it got us a little nervous. So we went to the hospital on Tuesday, and at the hospital, unfortunately, because of the whole coronavirus, I can't be in the hospital. It's only one parent that is allowed. And so Melissa was in there, and I was watching Ava. And then from that hospital, they transferred Ava and Melissa over to LA Children's Hospital through an ambulance, with their biggest fear being that the skin disorder was possibly eroding her esophagus inside. I share a little bit about my skin disease from time to time. I'm sure you guys have heard about it. But in essence, there are different cases, there are different forms. There's simplex, there's junctional, there's dystrophic. There are different degrees within each of these things with the skin disorder. I have simplex. I have a higher, more severe case. So for instance, when I was born, my parents talked about how a lot of my body, especially because of the diaper areas, were just covered in blisters, and they are extremely, extremely painful. And so Aria, thank God, was not born with it, and with Ava being born with it, it was it's been hard emotionally for me, because I know the pain that I went through, and I know the track that I had to take for Jesus to work with me, for me to realize that I had worth and all that kind of stuff, and I never wanted any of my kids to have to experience that. And so, especially with this whole, when they're saying that it could be eroding her esophagus, in essence, what they're saying is their fear, and what I hear them saying is she might have a more severe case than even I had, where it affects her internally. And unfortunately, that is a severe case where it can affect you internally. To give you an idea, they've actually mapped out and checked her airways inside and different things like that to make sure that there is no blistering or scarring. Thank the Lord, right now that they believe it's something else that caused the bleeding, and they think that her esophagus is fine. Through the airways, they checked, and it doesn't look like there's blistering or scarring. And so what they're thinking is they're doing tests to correctly identify, but they're thinking that she does have a milder version of my skin disorder, which is the best. That's a best case thing. I would rather have that. But throughout this whole process, I have been emotional about it. Every time we've had to pierce and drain a blister, after I've had to, we comfort Ava, and then I have to walk away and catch myself, because it's painful, and I know what she's going through. And so throughout this whole process, I've cried, I've been upset since we have dropped her off at the hospital, and with all of their worst case scenario stuff, I think almost every hour I have, cried and prayed and all that kind of stuff until there was nothing left within me. And so the thing that I was praying about, and I really felt like God wanted to talk about today, I know this is completely, it's kind of unscripted. This is not the normal setting, so you're gonna hear me say a lot more and all that kind of stuff. I apologize. You can count it and let me know how many times I say it, but I'm really speaking from the heart. I believe as a pastor, it's important for us to be transparent. And I can't stand before all of you guys and just be like, everything in life is hunky-dory, and God is going to do great things, and it's going to be amazing. You are going to walk through life happy 100% of the time, because that's not the case. And I think it's important for you guys to see the youth pastor sharing his heart and being transparent and showing you that tough things happen. But what matters is what happens with our faith through those tough things. And that's what I wanted to talk to you guys really quickly about today, is the question that some people have asked me is, kind of what does this do for your faith? And I think for a lot of us, there are a lot of questions that we have with everything we see going on in the world. When we have bad, disappointing things happen, when we get bad news, I know for some of you seniors, it might not be you're questioning God, but there might have been a lot of questions with, this is really my senior year. I don't get a prom. I don't get, a good graduation. Some of you guys were set up to be in plays and to do great things in your senior year, and it kind of got stolen away from you. And for a lot of us, we hit these moments and seeing everything that is going on in the world constantly. I mean, people joke around, but it's been like since December, every month there's been something awful happening in the world. And it makes a lot of us go, okay, God, like, what is going on here? And kind of in my way of talking about this, it is not to bash those people, but before we know of a couple of Christian artists and singers and things like that came out, so to speak, and basically said, I don't have faith. I lost my faith. I've walked away from God, or whatever. I don't have the exact quotes. And most recently there was another one with a group that just said they lost their faith. And in the midst of the storm that I am going through, and in the midst of the storms that you see around you, and maybe some of you guys are in the midst of storms right now, I want to challenge you guys with something. When we look in the Bible, there is time and time again where Jesus heals, where he heals people of every type of ailment, every type of disease, I mean, even death. And you see in the Bible, and I realize, yes, Jesus was a healer, and so because of that, people are going to flock more. But when you read in the Bible, you see these people that go through extraordinary lengths when they're in their times of troubles, when they're in their times of pain, when they're in the times where they feel like the storm is overwhelming them. They don't run from Jesus, but they run to him. They cut in ceilings to bring the sick to him. They go through extraordinary lengths and distances and spend lots of money just to be able to break something at Jesus' feet, just to be able to give him something, just to see him. Their storms and their issues push them closer to Jesus. And in fact, the one that I want to talk to you guys about today is Jairus and his daughter, and it comes from Mark 5, and there's a part that we begin with, but I'm going to skip over that, and we're going to go to verse 35 here. This guy Jairus, he goes to Jesus and he's begging for his daughter to be healed, and so Jesus starts going with this man, and then along the way they get sidetracked by someone else that needs a healing, and it's taking all this time. And then in verse 35 it says this: while he was still speaking to her, the woman with the issue of blood, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue, and they told him, "Your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now." I mean, imagine being in Jairus' shoes, and in that moment, you get that news. You went for him for the healing, and some other people get healed along the way, and then someone comes and says that your kid's dead. Don't bother Jesus. But Jesus overheard them and said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid. Just have faith." Then Jesus stopped the crowd. It wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, "Why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead, she's only asleep." The crowd laughed at him. Okay, so here it is. Your daughter's dead. Jesus is coming, and he's coming to heal. And on top of that, now when he makes a statement like this, they're laughing at him. I mean, I wonder how he felt as a dad in that moment. Like, oh my goodness, not only did he not come to heal my daughter now, but now she's dead. And now these people are laughing at him because he's making this statement. I don't know where Jairus' faith level is at this moment. But he made them all leave, and he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, get up. And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. They were overwhelmed and totally amazed. In this guy's life, everything came crashing down, I'm sure. I mean, he was already probably in his head spinning around with craziness because his daughter is this sick. But now this servant comes along and says his daughter is dead. Imagine everything come crashing down at what seemed like the worst possible moment. And yet Jesus looked at him and he said, hey, have faith. As I said, others laughed at Jesus when he said, she's only sleeping. They laughed at him. Have faith. And Jairus saw his daughter healed in an amazing way. See, throughout this issue, my emotions have been all over the place and my thoughts have been all over the place. But the one thing I can tell you is that there is not a lack of faith. Throughout all of this has pushed me deeper into Jesus and crying out to him and believing for impossible things and reaching out to churches and friends and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I am blown away with how many people have viewed that little video that I put together, with how many people in churches. Literally, there are churches all across the U.S. There are, between different groups, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pastors of different churches that are praying for us, and they are praying for Ava, and I am blown away with it. But I can tell you there is not a shaking in my faith because I know that God is still in control. And in fact, if anything, even with my questions, even with my fears, even with my worries, this has not made me run from Jesus or run and say, I lost my faith, but instead it has pushed me deeper into him. My challenge to you guys is this. What happens when things fall apart around you? When things are really rough? When you have these expectations and they come crashing down? When you thought this relationship was going to go somewhere and it didn't? When you thought you had your future planned out and you find out you don't have the money, you don't have the means, you don't have the grades. When you get this bad health report from a doctor. When you have friends that move away. When you have lives that you built that are taken away. What happens to your faith? When you have questions that you can't get answers for. See, it should be no secret, but when it comes to our walk with God, we are not guaranteed a 100% fun time. In fact, Jesus said, hey, if they're persecuting me, they're definitely going to be persecuting you. Being a Christian is not an easy road. The question is, what do you do when these troubles come? Does it cause you to run from God and blame him and attack him and leave him? Or does it cause you to push in further? I'm not saying you have to be like a super peace mind and be like, you know what, everything is just going to be great. Because believe me, I have cried. I have questions that I have thrown out to God. I have been upset. I've been mad. I've been, just broken. But in the end, it brings me right back to him. Even though I don't have all the answers. Even though the things that I've been praying about has not fully happened yet and I'm still believing they will, does it shatter your faith when you run into trials and when you run into tribulation and when you run into storms? I want to challenge you to ask those questions. I mean, we talked about it before, that doubts sometimes push us closer to Jesus. When we have doubts and when we voice them to him, it ends up pushing us closer to Jesus a lot of times. But when you have those situations, those storms that you are going through, does it end up bringing you closer to God? What areas in your life are you struggling with right now? For each person, it's going to be different. For some of you guys, it could be some of these major issues that I don't even know about. Maybe one of you guys have cancer. Maybe you have had someone that has died or passed away. Or maybe some of you guys, the things that you're struggling with are a lot smaller in comparison to that. And you're like, wow, that's all I have. Maybe I'm just making this into a bigger proportion. But we all have struggles. I mean, do we have issues when it comes to even trusting in God? I know it goes against human logic to say when things are falling apart and we can't get answers from God and we don't know what he's doing to say press into him further. It goes against logic because we're like, well, no, that's when you would start questioning the person. That's when you'd start leaving. But I challenge you guys, as I have been doing and as I've been finding, is that in this storm, in these moments, is when my faith is growing even greater and even stronger in God. When I don't have the answers. When I don't know what's going to happen, when I am in the midst of the storm, it causes me to trust him more and to cry out to him more. So the challenge is, what are you guys going through? What are you experiencing? What is going on in your life right now? What struggles do you have? What issues are you having in your faith? And then I challenge you to cry out to God, to go to him with it, to trust in him with it. To not let these storms shake your faith, but grow your faith. What are you going through right now? Drop me a line, drop me a message, send me a text. Let me know if there is something that I can pray for you for. I love you guys. Me, Melissa, and Arya, who's right outside the room going, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. We love you. We miss you. We can't wait to see you guys. Good night.